It's the time to get down.
Because of the imagination
Right.
that was stimulated through literature. That's why we have to get back to reading
That's true.
and taking in all kinds of literature so that you could develop an international perspective. What we want for our people and for our children is for them to develop an international perspective. We can't make up their mind. We want to expose them and get them to broaden those horizons. That's what we're trying to really do here. Even though I know we go over the edge, we act crazy, we act a fool, because that's the dichotomy that we are as people. We are both at times serious and committed, and at other times we just act like a fool. And I know I represent that same dichotomy. But we know we do want for our youth that exposure, increased education and exposure, and to instill in them that desire to learn. So hopefully, it'll be more.
Yeah, also too, and I'd like you guys to check out, because I've been watching PBS lately because I don't have cable. Anyways,
Gotta pay those bills,
I've been watching PBS, and they had a wonderful documentary on Zora Nelson Hurston.
Oh.
Their Eyes Were Watching God. You not only have seen her and read her books, but you need to go and check out on PBS Zora Nelson Hurston's story, because just her own story alone of this intellectual writer from the 20s, 30s, 40s,
You saw Zora
Nelson?
From the Harlem Renaissance.
Exactly. But she also, Their Eyes Were Watching God, the one that, she's done other books as well, but that's the only one I can think of at the moment. Check out her story on PBS.
Well, part of the thing with her,
what a wonderful life this woman had. I mean, she was doing things as an independent woman back in the 20s and 30s that dudes weren't even doing. Traveling all over the world, and just her story alone is quite intellectual. She was an intellect beyond her time. I don't even think people got her, really. I don't,
if I remember correctly, part of the controversy with her is that her book she wrote in
Zora Neale Hurston.
Thank you. That's how I was looking it up.
Exactly. I'm sorry.
She wrote in the old style. She wrote in the old style where she wrote these books, and they were from the black perspective. And as you read them, they were written in the old black dialogues. If you think Ebonics was the thing, it was like, "Well, Joe, be going down." Okay, so as part of the whole Harlem Renaissance, there was somewhat of a rebellion about the even though she
backlash.
There was a backlash, even though this had been the way. In other words, she was capturing elements of black life that were totally descriptive of the time. But other folks of the Harlem Renaissance, for example, people that you know, like
Thurgood Marshall.
No.
Yes, they talked about it in the documentary.
They rebelled against her because her writing the style. Now
and columnists.
Right, because of the other people at the time and where those were going. So that's something we can actually cover on a story.
Well, Mario,
because,
the part I like about what you guys are doing.
Langston Hughes, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I was see what was happening. I had a brain seizure, and I was feeling my father turn over in his grave because I couldn't remember Langston Hughes.
Just not know. It happens.
But the Harlem Renaissance, there was a whole issue. All these folks knew each other, okay?
Yeah.
And there was an issue with this of these young black writers and the style. Some say the world will end in fire. Some say in ice. What I tasted of desire, hold with those who favor fire. That's Langston Hughes.
Hey, you know what, Mario? Here, and I can't get into it because we got other stories. But the part that I want to look at, and I always talk about it here, and I don't have enough time, is that I said I'd like to look at a positive balance. I'm not going to tell people to censor stuff because it happens to paint a picture. The problem is when it's probably 80% of what the profile of a culture is, when we know there are many other stories.
Yeah.
And I relate this to not saying that stop making films like Precious. It's just that it seems like we have a ratio of how many stories are painted in a certain way against the ones that are positive. And I'll say this in a reference to the Oscars. When you look at the Oscars and how they're awarded, the story that's built within those Oscars always is something where it is not a positive in most cases. And when I do look at it, if I see Sidney Poitier and he winning his Oscar, if I see Denzel Washington, those are the few. But when I look at black women Oscar winners, I always say, there's a tragedy within the story, whether it's Halle Berry in Monsters Ball, where she is being victimized or something has happened where she is not of that type of woman that we can all cheer about. So and even going back to whether it's Gone with the Wind or other stories where I forgot the woman's name, she won the first
Heidi McDaniel.
That's right. But the story built around how she had to play this role. So I always say that, look, I'm not going to knock them because they were there doing their work. The issue is that when I was 15, 16, 17 watching Superfly, the first thing I did is rebel against it. Not because of the movie being produced. It's the part that I said, can I see 3 stories to every one that's a positive outlook and projection of our culture and along with other people's cultures. Show us dreaming in ways that maybe not living right now that we can live in the future. That's just me.
Exactly. What else? It always has to do with who's telling your story, because that's how the decisions are made. For example, the reason why you have so little spoken about the Japanese internment is because the Japanese themselves don't talk about that.
Right.
See, in other words, when you hear anybody talking about the Japanese internment during World War II in the United States, who do you hear talking about it? Americans.
Yes.
Okay, not even Japanese Americans,
they
right?
Definitely weren't.
They don't want to talk about it. They would just let it be forgotten, you know.
Right.
And this is different culture. Different cultures deal with different issues at a time in different ways. And even though you will see in general, human nature is with time to tend to hide those things that are embarrassing.
Right.
But it's just, I think we're in the era right now with black folks where we're just in the era of airing our dirty laundry. And so much of our history, of recent history, has involved tragedy. But just wait, as we're moving so much forward, just wait till the times reflect that black people have more positive stories to tell. More will be told.
I agree. I'll sit there and say, if you guys want to look at filmmaking in a day where you can't even tell it existed, go to Oscar Micheaux. Just go look up that name, go back, read some history on that, and then go see some of the clips and the projections of how we are. Unbelievable when they changed the landscape, said we do not want to show this group. And I know we're beyond that because that time was in the late 20s. Just go look at that history and you'll find out that something was done to say it was intentional not to show us in a certain way.
Well, and look at that's why my thing is not so much what you say, but the attitude behind it. Like when I say Negro, I don't say it
in a negative way.
Right. Zora Neale Hurston wrote about black people and used a dialogue that many people, like, let me read a part. Here's a line like, "That's a big old resurrection lie, Ned. A slew foot, drag leg lie at that, and I dare you to hit me." See what I'm saying?
Right, I know what you're saying.
So I'm saying that was part of the issue, but it was the heart behind it, who's telling the story and why, that makes it relevant.
Why do you read it that way, Mario? Because the tone that you're showing it in.
She writes it.
That she writes it that way.
And she writes it like that.
Right.
In other words, it's written, you know I'm fighting, dog, and my hide is worth money.
There you go.
Hit me if you dare.
See?
Well, can I say something? Could you fix your face and then just read it like, hi,
how do you read this? You want to see it? Okay, I'll try to read it straight.
Try to read it without the...
Okay,
because you make it sound like
I'll read the same line and I'll try to read it in perfect English, okay? Here you go. "That's a big old resurrection lie, Ned. A slew foot."
It doesn't have the same
Wait, but listen.
That's right.
"Drag leg lie at that. And I dare ya to hit me too." Now that's ya. Y-U-H-T-U-H.
Right.
Why I dare ya to hit me too. You know I'm A-H-M. You know I'm a fighting dog, and my hide is worth money.
And my hide is worth money.
Hit me if you dare.
Hit me if you dare.
I'll wash your tub or gator guts and that quick.
Tub. No, I won't. But anyways, I thought I'd say it.
All right. Yeah. So anyway, the whole point is the whole, that's before Ebonics.
Yes.
And this is a whole nother history lesson discussion.
You must understand, Zora Neale Hurston, not only was she a writer, but she also hooked up with Margaret Mead, who was the great anthropologist of the time. And she also, meaning Ms. Hurston, also became an anthropologist. So because there were no black studies, she was at the epicenter of black history, black studies,
the Harlem Renaissance.
So it was part of all of that. So this month for black